I'll just announce the class. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you all so much for joining His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj's daily call. Today, we are very happy to have Maharaj on the call. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, are we continuing the Srimad Bhagavatam series, or today are we talking about any other topic, Maharaj?
We'll continue with the Bhagavatam.
Yes, I'll share my screen. So today's verse is 12th chapter, 3rd chapter, verse number 43. Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Alo Narajam Jagatam Param Gurum. Vilokanatha Natha Parapankajam. Vajainamartyam Bhagavatam Vachutam. Yaksyam Kripasada Vibhinna Chaitasaha. Okay. O King, in the age of Kali, people's intelligence will be diverted by atheism, and they will almost never offer sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Spiritual Master of the universe. Although the great personalities who control the three worlds all bow down to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the petty and miserable human beings of this age will not do so. The impulse to find the absolute truth, the source of all existence, has motivated philosophers, theologians, and other intellectuals for various persuasions since time immemorial, and continues to do so today. However, soberly analyzing the ever-increasing plurality of the so-called philosophies, religions, past, ways of life, and so on, we find in almost all cases the ultimate objective is something impersonal or formless. But this idea of an impersonless or formless absolute truth has serious logical flaws. According to ordinary rules of logic, particular effects should directly or indirectly embody the attributes and nature of its own cause. Thus, that which has no personality activity could hardly be the source of all personality or activity. Our irrepressible proclivity to philosophize about the ultimate truth expresses itself through philosophical, scientific, and mystical attempts to discover that from which everything emanates. This material world, which is a seamlessly limited network of interactive causes and effects, is certainly not the absolute truth, since scientific observation of material elements indicates that the stuff of this world, material energy, is endlessly transformed into different states and shapes. Therefore, one particular instance of materiality cannot be the ultimate source of all other things. We may speculate that matter in some shape or other has always existed. This theory, however, is no longer attractive to modern cosmologists, such as those of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And even if we do not posit that matter has always existed, we must explain the source of consciousness, in which, if we want to satisfy our philosophical impulse to discovering the absolute truth. Although modern empirical fanatics state that nothing is real except matter, everyone commonly experiences that consciousness is not the same kind of substance as a stone, a pencil, or water. Awareness itself is contradistinction to the objects of awareness. Awareness itself, in contradistinction to the objects of awareness, is not a physical entity, but rather a process of perception and understanding. While there is ample evidence of systematic interdependent relation between matter and consciousness, there is no rigid empirical evidence whatsoever that matter is the cause of consciousness. Thus, the theory that the material world has always existed and is therefore the ultimate truth does not scientifically or even intuitively explain the source of consciousness, which is the most fundamental, real aspect of our existence. Furthermore, as demonstrated by Dr. Richard Thompson of the State University of New York at Binghamton, and confirmed by several Nobel laureates in physics, who praised his work, the laws of nature governing the transformation of matter simply do not contain sufficient complex information to account for the inconceivable complexity of the events taking place within our own bodies and those in other forms of life. In other words, not only do the material laws of nature fail to account for the existence of consciousness, but they cannot explain even the interaction of material elements at a complex organic levels. Even Socrates, the great Western philosopher, was disgusted with the attempt to establish ultimate causality in terms of mechanistic principles. The heat and luminosity of the sun's rays demonstrate to the satisfaction of any rational man that the sun, the source of the rays, is certainly not a dark, cold globe, but rather a reservoir of unlimited, almost unlimited heat and light. Similarly, the innumerable instances of personality and personal consciousness within creation are more than adequate to demonstrate the existence somewhere or of an unlimited reservoir of consciousness and personal behavior. In his dialogue, Philebus, the Greek philosopher Plato, argued that just as material elements in our body are derived from a vast reservoir of material elements existing within the universe, our rational intelligence is also derived from the great cosmic intelligence existing within the universe, and this supreme intelligence is God, the Creator. Unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, many leading thinkers cannot understand this and instead deny that the absolute truth, the source of our personal consciousness, has consciousness and personality. This is as reasonable as saying that the sun is cold and dark. In Kali Yuga, many people present cheap stereotype arguments such as, if God had a body of personality, he would be limited. In this inadequate attempt at logic, the qualified term is falsely presented in a universal sense. What really should be said is, if God had a material body or a material personality, like those we have experienced, he would be limited. But we leave out the qualifying objective material and make a pseudo-universal assertion, as if we understood the full range within the total reality of bodies and personalities. I'll read that again. If God had a material body or material personality like those we have experienced, he would be limited. But we leave out the qualifying adjective of material and make a pseudo-universal assertion, as if we understood the full range within total reality of bodies and personalities. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other Vedic literatures teach that the transcendental form and personality of the absolute truth are in unity. Clearly, to be truly infinite, God must not only be quantitative, but also qualitatively infinite. Unfortunately, in our mechanistic industrial age, we tend to define infinity only in its quantitative sense, And thus we fail to notice that an infinity of personal qualities is a necessary aspect of infinity. In other words, God must have infinite beauty, infinite wealth, infinite intelligence, infinite humor, infinite kindness, infinite anger, and so on. Infinite is an absolute, and if anything we observe in this world is not contained somehow or other within the concept of the absolute, then that conception is of something limited and not of the absolute at all. Only in Kali Yuga are there philosophers foolish enough to profoundly define the most absolute term of all, God, in materialistic relative ways, and then declare himself in lightning fingers. No matter how big our brain may be, we should have the common sense to place it at the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Umagyantimirandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksunnalitam Yena Tasmai Shivuru Namaha Sri Chaitanyamanovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutava Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Vedati Swam Vedam Imam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pustaya Bhutava Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Shri Deve Gaurvani Pachari Namaste Vadadi Yapya Vanchakalpati Vyati Vasindi Parevicha Patitanam Bhavani Jo Vaishnava Dhanam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. We're getting a very complete and clear refutation of the materialistic theories who define God in their own limited way. They generally, and as you can see from this purport, using material observation or material laws, superimplant these same laws upon God and expect that that definition of God fits into the reality of their foolish explanation. In other words, if you start with a particular concept, you look for material that fits into that concept. In other words, God follows the same laws as we do, and therefore anything that fits into that reality of the workings of the laws of material nature in terms of the different categories can be also, as they see it, supplied also to the definition of what is the nature or what is the position of God. But as we understand from authority that God is achintya, it's one of his terminologies, he is inconceivable. He is beyond the range of the material energy. He places the material energy in motion, but he is not of the same nature as the material energy. Just like if you have you make a car, you stand there and you get all the ingredients together and very scientifically with your intelligence put together a car. The car is made out of rubber. It's got metal, different types of metals, iron. It's got leather, various types of materials in it. And you say, well, and then someone comes along and said, well, because you made the car, you must be made out of iron, material, leather, rubber also. But that would be ludicrous because obviously it's observably not true. So in the same way, they use their limited philosophical, speculative ideas to somehow fit God into the same categories that we are in the material energy, and define that as the nature and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you read this purport over and over again, you'll see how really intelligent this logical argument has been destroyed. Has been presented in order to destroy the illogic of the so-called scientific theories. Just like one day, one of our devotees in our movement, he was invited to meet one of the famous atheists, which is Richard Dawkins. You know him, he's the #1 atheist. And he's written some books also. And so one devotee came as a representative of our tradition, Krishna consciousness. And there were other traditions there. There were Christians, there were Islamic people. And the idea was to ask him questions and get answers, or to hear from him about what is his philosophy. But as it was described by the devotee, that most of the other traditions were just badgering him and just speaking very strongly in a very orthodox way about how God exists, with no logic, with no intelligence behind it. That if you don't believe in God, you're going to go to hell, you're going to suffer, and all of these things. In other words, there was no logic to their arguments. Finally, at the end, our devotee was given a chance to ask him, "You would like to ask Mr. Dawkins any final questions?" And the devotee said yes. He said, and then he presented the question. He said, "Can you explain the source of consciousness?" And Mr. Dawkins, somehow or other, as he acted in a very gentlemanly way, he said, "That I cannot say." So here we have all of these persons who are atheists or pseudo-spiritualists, scientists, self-styled incarnations, and various other personalities who present themselves, and they all like to give their definition of what is God. They don't take God's definition of what he is. If you ask me, if somebody asks me, if somebody tells me I am like this, because they heard from somebody else who told them that I am like this, but I say, no, I'm not like this. This is what I'm like. Just like today, I was talking on the phone to someone, and the person was telling me that he heard from others that I was going to be doing something on a particular date. Now, I never said anything to anybody about doing anything on that date, but this is what he heard. So then, of course, I corrected him and saying, no, it's not true. So if you want to know about a person, you have to go to the person himself or someone who knows the person very well. You can't just speculate and say he's like this, or I heard he's like that. But Krishna explains what he's like. He gives so much explanations in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, Hamadi Devanam, I'm the source of all demigods. Everything comes from me. He explains his qualities, his relationships with his devotees, his all-powerful creative nature, his more intimate, sweet nature, his Madhurya nature. And he gives a lot of understanding of himself. And a lot of these things are confirmed by the great devotees themselves, the acharyas. as Arjuna, is the same to Krishna. Param Brahmam, Param Dhammam, Pavitram Midam Udam Uttamam. He says, you are the source of everything. You are infinite beauty. You are intelligence. You are so many things. And then he says, not only are you saying this, but this is also being said by Asita, Devala, Vyas, and Narada. So great souls are also saying the same thing that you're saying about yourself. Therefore, not only do you speak about yourself, but others who know you, they also speak. So why don't they take the knowledge coming from people who are qualified to speak, or from God directly in his words coming through Shastra? Because they present themselves as being of greater intelligence, and they have to come up with something unique in order to be recognized for their position. So it's a cheating mentality, and people believe all this stuff. Nobody can say what God is like, because you have to know God to actually say that. And how many people know God? Krishna says, hardly anyone knows me. But he tells everyone what he's like, how he does things, how his energies are working, how he's not connected with his energies directly, but he is the source and the controller of the energies. So all of these things are given by God in the Shastras, but these envious scientists or so-called spiritualists have their own ways of defining the absolute truth. And therefore, they continue to speculate. And as they continue to speculate, they find themselves changing their own theories. Just like there's this theory that this is part of Darwinian's theory, that the humans have descended or have evolved from the apes. And so they make that as the part of the theory of evolution. So if that was true, why isn't it happening now? If it was true before, why aren't humans coming from apes now? Well, then they might say, well, now that the human race has been established by the ape-like personalities, then the humans just propagate themselves. So evolution, in other words, stops at a certain point, and then and something else takes over. So they have their own bogus arguments. I was talking to one person about this. I said, well, why isn't it happening now? If the evolutionary theory is a continuous theory of development, why isn't humans being produced from apes now? And his response, well, that happens every 1,500 years. So we have to wait and for these periodical. So they all have their own half-baked, speculative ideas of what is beyond the range of their senses. And it says that the senses are imperfect, and what to speak, even for those who have perfect senses, what is beyond the range of the senses cannot be understood even by perfect senses. You have to go to a higher authority to understand that. That's why Jiva Goswami very clearly says that the nature of the absolute truth is achintya. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable by your own intelligence or by your own efforts. But it's not inconceivable for those who are fully engaged in devotional service and hear from Krishna directly about his own spoken nature. So you have so many theories of what is God, who is God, what is he like, what does he do? And all of these are all, somebody's speculation. logical empiricism. They take logic in a material sense and apply that so-called material logic onto the, but God defies all forms of logic because he is the source of logic. And there is spiritual logic, which is completely aloof from all forms of material logic. Just like Krishna told Arjuna to fight on the battlefield. So you might say from a moral principle, making a peaceful man into a fighter is it's wrong because, violence is wrong. So all of that logic falls short when God wants violence in order to establish spiritual rule. Then God's morality takes a different twist. And if Arjuna did not go along with Krishna, he would be immoral for not fighting rather than fighting, because he would be working against the desire or refusing to act on the request of the Lord. So if you want to know the Lord and you want to know the science of how to know the Lord, you have to hear that from persons who are free from the four defects. Imperfect senses, making mistakes, cheating, and what is the other one? Tendency to become illusioned. So these four characteristics are inherent in the conditioned souls, no matter how intelligent they may be by material standards. They are just like, for instance, I have a news article. I decided to keep this news article. It's quite interesting. Is that there was a particular theory called the mirrors theory, or how scientists see cosmic bodies within the cosmological arrangement. So they were observing through their telescopes and other forms of devices these bodies that are in the cosmology. And so then they wrote down their theories and ideas according to what they observed. But then there was a thing called refraction. Refraction means light that hits a particular body and then throws that body to a different location. Just like if you hold a mirror up to the sun in a certain angle, you can create heat in a different place simply by using that mirror. In other words, you can move something by the mirror, or the mirror reflects the object in a different place than what it actually is. Just like if you look at the sun in the mirror, the sun is not in the mirror. The sun is in its orbit in the cosmos. So this mirrors effect proved that what they are seeing is millions of miles away from where they say it exists, called refracted light. The light hits an object and throws the object into a different area to be seen in that area, and not where it actually is. So after 35 years of study, they had to throw out all of that research because they finally came to the understanding that what they're seeing is not where it is. And Einstein warned them also about this refracted light theory, but they didn't accept his theory, and they went on to do it on their own. And therefore, they wasted all of the taxpayers' millions of dollars in their bogus research. This is one of the greatest calamities in the world. People give money in taxes, and the government and all of these different agencies get their grants to do all of their speculative activities, which are all based on their imperfect senses, and therefore the conclusions are also wrong. So they take money, get grants, and get various types of commissions, and do all of these studies, which are all wrong. And they take all of this money from the taxpayers. And then they give the taxpayers back wrong information. So this is today's, therefore, you have to, if you want to know the scientific understanding of the nature of God, you have to go to the Bhagavatam, to the Puranas, some of the Puranas, and to the Bhagavad Gita, and other Vedic literatures that clearly define the nature of God and our relationship with him, his qualities, and everything else in relationship to him. Then you can understand, yes, God is like this. But they won't do that. I had an interesting experience. Not interesting, it was kind of ludicrous, I guess you might say. I was running a preaching center for many years in one city in America called Cincinnati, Ohio. And we had taken over this one particular house, big house, and we turned it into a temple. And on one floor, we had the deities. So on that floor, I built an altar, and we had the deities there. It was a wooden altar, quite simple, but sufficient. And so after many years, we decided to move to another place. And the building was sold to, we were renting it. The building was sold to another person, some ordinary family. And so when they came into the building now, their reaction was, and we got the word from the landlord, wow, the energy in here feels really nice. Feels so peaceful. It's so wonderful to be in here. And they were particularly referring to the temple room. So the altar that we built was so big that we couldn't somehow or other get it out of the building, so we left it there. So when the new tenants moved in, the altar was still there in the temple room. So what did they put on the altar? Not pictures of God or anything even of the mode of goodness. They put their television there. So God was replaced by, the one-eyed monster television. So that's their deity. And then they get their information from this deity, who is a one-eyed monster, who is full of all kinds of speculation and lies. And they call themselves well-versed in the knowledge of life. So this is what goes on in today's world. And it's quite pervasive too. It's not just something that you pinpoint in certain places. It's all over. People don't know anything about God, and they don't know their relationship with God. And they'll accept some theory that somebody comes up with until they come across another theory that's different, and then they'll accept that one. But God is not changeable by one's own, speculative. God is God, and he is who he is. You just have to learn from his pure devotees or from him directly. Okay, so we'll stop there.
Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the class. Thank you so much. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or realizations, you can please go ahead. Maharaj, I was thinking, like when you were talking about this topic, so usually people doesn't want to much go closer to the God because they are always busy with their lifestyle. Um, they know that God is there, but usually they don't realize much, and also they don't give so much of time on a daily basis. Um, so I see lot many people. Okay, so yeah, what we are very busy. We have other things to do, so we don't have that much time to give to God. Or yeah, whenever it is needed, occasionally I'll go to temple. All that, what's there? They'll say, Maharaj.
Well, because people think God is the order supplier, and if I don't need nothing, then I don't have to bother him. But when I need something, I push the God button. I offer some prayers asking for, you know, something I need in my life. And then, I'm worshiping God because he's got everything and we don't. And therefore, he becomes relevant when I need something. If I don't need something, then, I'll take care of my own affairs. I won't bother God.
Mm.
Even that conception is wrong because the whole idea of God is not an order supplier. It's a person that we worship as the source of all existence, as the embodiment of all good qualities, and as the compassionate feature of all existence. We worship God out of devotion, out of love, not simply for some business arrangement or for some material gain. So yeah, therefore people are not educated in God consciousness. That's why they have so many problems. As soon as you become educated in God consciousness, then whatever problems you may encounter are easily solvable by the principle of devotional service. And I say easily solvable if you accept the authority given.
Yeah, even though we are suffering, we watch those things, and usually when I talk to people, they say that, yeah, it's there. We are sometimes we are suffering, sometimes we are happy. The life is like that. We keep on going like that. What to do? It's like that. They'll say nothing much. They don't want to come into God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, or take it seriously.
And that's their misfortune.
Yeah.
What can you say? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. People do come to God every day in a very real way, but they come in different reasons, either out of distress, material gain, or those who are actually intelligent looking for some looking for the absolute truth. What is the absolute truth? What is the purpose of life? The first question that opens up real God consciousness is, what is the purpose of life? There is a whole class of existentialists who say that life has no meaning, or you can just give your own meaning to life and that becomes the meaning. There was one famous author, Albert Camus. He wrote one book called Nausea. Remember, he said life made him sick. That's the book. He became famous for that. He couldn't see any reason for life. But in one sense, he was correct because there's no reason for material life. But there is reason for life because life is spiritual, not material. But his whole idea was centered around material life. Therefore, he saw everything as an expression of the absurd. It's all absurd. So he, in order to prove his theory, he one day committed suicide. And people study his books in colleges and universities today. And Albert Camus, and then you have, Sartre, the French existentialist. And then you have, what's his name? Sigmund Freud, that everything is based on sex life, and sex life is the only meaning of life. So you have all of these persons who take a little aspect of truth and turn it into the complete understanding of life. Therefore, you have to read Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita here from Srila Prabhupada and from his devotees to get a clear understanding. If we don't read the books, if we don't hear the lectures sufficiently, then we'll also not understand Krishna or how he does things. And when things happen in our life, we will become confused, or we may also become filled with anxiety, or we may even doubt that God exists. Because how can these things happen if there is a good God somewhere? Some people make all of their own theories because they don't hear from the authorities. Prabhupada had a nice discussion with some Christian priests. And probably their point was, we have to take care of the needy. So we give food, we give clothing, we give all of these things. And Prabhupada said, better to give education, because people are not educated, they have so many problems. So the problems in the world are lack of education or ignorance of their relationship with God. So once we establish a system of education where people can understand who is God, what is their relationship with God, and how to develop that relationship, then although problems may exist, still the solutions are now given. They have no solutions for their problems. Just like allopathic medicine generally observes a person's symptoms and gives it the understanding of the disease. Well, you have this symptoms, therefore you have this disease. And therefore here is a pill, or here is some medicine, here is an injection, and that will cure the disease. So what the pill, the medicine, and the injection does, if it's actually bona fide, sometimes we take issue with that also, is that it deals with the symptoms and not the disease. The symptoms of the disease are not the disease. But there's part of the disease. The disease is something else. It takes root in the cells or someplace in the body, and it exhibits certain symptoms. Therefore, to simply observe symptoms and explain that that is the reality doesn't mean you understand the essence. So education is required. That's why Krishna consciousness is, Prabhupada said, we are not another religious movement. We are a cultural movement giving spiritual education. Spiritual culture based on philosophical and transcendental knowledge coming from the Supreme Source himself. So we are not classified as a religion in the real sense of the term. We're an educational movement that gives people spiritual education. Just like Prabhupada was saying, the fact that a person goes through different stages of life, Dehino smin yata dehe kovam yoganam jarata tate hantara pratya judas, doesn't make it Eastern. It doesn't make it Hindu. It's a scientific principle. It applies to everyone. The soul goes through different stages of life, no matter what body you're in. So that's scientific knowledge. It's not Hindu knowledge or Eastern knowledge. So many of our terminologies that explain the principles of truth apply all across. They apply to everyone, not just a certain group of people. Because everyone is essentially the same. We have a body, but we are not the body, we're a soul. So education is the most important thing, spiritual education.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. So one has to come up from the point of religious to the spiritual level, right? Right, Maharaj?
That comes by education, because education is a light in the right direction.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah.
If you don't know, then you'll accept the wrong thing. If you don't know, you'll speculate and come up with your own ideas. Why did Prabhupada spend so much time translating all these books? Do we ask ourselves that question? Why did Prabhupada spend so much time giving all of this knowledge? Because he wanted to be a famous author of books? No, that wasn't his motivation. Because he wanted to give this knowledge because he knows when you have knowledge, you're free. Just like Socrates was mentioned in the first book. Socrates was preaching against the church during his time. And he was preaching reincarnation. The church at that time had already rejected the idea of reincarnation and said that anyone who preaches this idea of reincarnation is a heretic. And therefore, they are subject to punishment. So Socrates he didn't give up because he knew this was correct. And they warned him to stop, but he didn't stop. So they arrested him, put him in jail, and sentenced him to death by taking hemlock, which is a type of poison. So they said to him, Socrates, when you die, what should we do with you? Meaning, what should we do with your body? And Socrates said, as far as my body is concerned, you can do anything you want, but as far as I'm concerned, you have to catch me. He knew he wasn't the body.
Yeah.
He knows when the body dies, the soul lives on. The soul is the person. That's knowledge. That's fundamental knowledge. Higher knowledge is the nature of God. And in between knowledge is our relationship with God. So these books must be understood in a very practical way and applied. And when everything is clear, it's not that we have philosophy for the sake of being philosophers. We've tried to live the philosophy in such a way as the philosophy becomes part of us. This knowledge is inherent in the soul. The soul is chit, it's full of transcendental knowledge. But in order for it to awaken to its real nature, we have to hear it from the outside. We hear it from the outside and awakens that same knowledge from the inside. And that is called spiritual knowledge. Or sometimes we say intuitive knowledge. That knowledge which is understood by experience, not simply by theory. So unless we educate people, they'll continue to go on with their wrong ideas, speculation.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you. Supriya Mataji, you have a question?
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Maharaj
Little
is
bit more
saying I
increase.
should.
Yeah,
Okay.
little bit louder.
Okay. So Maharaj, what you said, it has basically people are not tending path towards the God consciousness is because of three factors I understood. First is people are becoming more and more materialistic in this Kali Yuga, and they are focusing more and more of material knowledge. And if you see now, only means of income for majority of the people is they're doing a job. That means doing a service for someone else, whether it's a Brahmana or whether it's a Shudra or a Kshatriya, any varna. So, and in order to retain that job, they have to continuously keep studying those subjects and come up with the new ideas and new facilities. Second thing, so that's why people don't get time for reading these spiritual stuff. Second thing is that people have, we have this material senses, and we don't generally experience God in our life. So we don't believe in God. And third is that there are many bogus spiritual gurus, if we see around, who try to take advantage of the people who have already we have already trusted them. So they try to exploit these people, because of which first of all, people don't try to go on that path. And treading a spiritual path requires a solid support from a strong spiritual guru. So, so how should we overcome all these three problems? Okay, I can understand material problem we have to minimize to some extent, but how should we go about all these things?
Well, that's what our movement is about. It's education. We're writing books, we're distributing books, we're holding seminars, we're inviting people to come, we're holding programs, inviting people to take part in the chanting. That's our outreach. If they become a little curious and somehow or other come, just like I'm in Mumbai right now, and we're at Radha Gopinath Temple. So twice a month they have a program for young people. And people are usually college level age. One is called Chaitana, which is a program for all girls. And the other one is called Parena, which is a program for all boys. So this once a month program, people come. And they also tell their friends after they come once, and they also come again, they bring their friends sometimes. So sometimes we get 300 to 500 people coming for a program, and each one of these. So these are young people who are growing up in today's society, who are being enamored by the materialistic society, but because they have some tendency towards spirituality, being born in pious families, they still have that inclination to go and hear. So unless people have a little bit of sukriti, a little bit of piety, or have done something in devotional service in some life, they are not attracted to our movement. And they give so many reasons why either God doesn't exist, We don't have, or what you're doing is just some ideas that you also created. In other words, there's a certain class of people who will never become Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada said, if I can make 10% of the world devotees, then that 10% can be the force to spread Krishna consciousness. So this is for people who are intelligent, not for any Joe who just goes to work every day, makes some money, comes home, sits on a couch, opens his can of beer and watches television. This guy's not interested in Krishna consciousness. So turn to Bhagavad Gita, Srimati, 7th chapter, verse number 15.
Yes, Maharaj.
7:15. I think this is more like the answer to your question.
Yeah.
Namam duskritina mudha prapadyante naradnam maya apavita jnana surabhavam astritam. Krishna speaking this verse. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest of mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, who partake in the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Krishna has mentioned 4 types of people here. The grossly foolish, mudha, the guy who works hard all day, just drinks beer, and just watches football on television, takes his family out to go swimming in the summertime. And most of the time he's just hanging in engaged in various types of gross sin. They never surrender. The lowest of the mankind are the Naradamas. They build social and political institutions thinking that these will help mankind. In other words, by social work and political arrangements, society will progress. They never surrender to the Lord. The third category is whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. These are the philosophers, the scientists, the people who are intellectuals in this world. Maya aparita gyan, their knowledge has been stolen by illusion. They have wrong understanding of knowledge, and therefore they take material knowledge as all in all. They study so many books, they have so many theories, they have so many ideas. They also engage in various types of philosophical speculations. They write books about it. They never surrender to the Lord. And the last one is the atheistic persons who are like demons. So Krishna tells you here, these 4, and if you read the purport, you'll find an explanation for each one of these 4 groups. It's in the purport. Then if you go to the next verse, 16, and Krishna says, Chatur Vidya Bhajate Mam, Jnana Sukriti no Arjuna, Artha Jigyasu Arti, Jnana Cha Bharata Sabha. O best among the Bhartas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service to me. The distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for the knowledge of the absolute truth. These 4 kinds of people come to God because they're distressed, they're looking for relief of their distress. Those who are looking for some economic gain, worship the Lord to get that. These 2 are on the very material platform. The inquisitive is a little better. They want to know what is the purpose of life. And they search through various types of teachings, and they come to spiritual life. And they become inquisitive to know more about spiritual life. And then the last is the best. That's explained in the purport. One who is actually searching for God. These four kinds of people render service to me. So Krishna makes it clear, four kinds don't surrender, four kinds do surrender. So learn the characteristics and qualities of each of these persons, and you can see, when you see them in the material world, then you can understand what category they fit into.
Regarding the
Read these verses and study these verses and the purports, and you'll have complete understanding of why people don't surrender and those who do come to Krishna consciousness.
Maharaj, regarding the surrender, in ISKCON, this surrendering and Diksha, is it one and the same thing? Someone told me it's the same thing.
What's that? I didn't hear that.
Surrender and taking a Diksha, is it one and the same thing?
Surrender and what?
And taking
Surrender
Diksha.
and taking Diksha.
She is asking taking Diksha, Maharaj.
Diksha is a symptom of surrender. It doesn't mean because you take Diksha, you're surrendered. It's just showing that you actually want to become surrendered. As Srila Prabhupada said, initiation means beginning. Before you're initiated, you're beginning to begin. In other words, you're practicing to understand whether you should begin or not. Once you take the spiritual master, then you begin your devotional life. That's why Prabhupada always said that initiation means beginning. So just like you're standing in front of a body of water, and you're not sure if you should jump in and try to swim, so you get a feel of the water. You walk in a little bit, you wade in, you see how deep it is. Maybe you splash around a while. But when you're actually swimming, then you're in it. And so Krishna consciousness means Adaustrada, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya. Faith brings you in association with devotees. Through that association with devotees, you practice Krishna consciousness. When you get a little attracted to Krishna consciousness, you think, oh, I want to make this my goal in life. Then you search out a bona fide spiritual master. Then you actually are beginning to enter into the path of bhakti. Bhakti is scientific. Don't think it's just some whimsical thought that, well, I like this thought, it fits into bhakti. I don't like this thought, it doesn't fit into bhakti. No. Everything is clearly explained because it's the psychophysical nature of the living entity to love and serve God. And how to awaken that nature is the scientific process of bhakti, which is a step-by-step process given by God himself and explained by the spiritual master. So all of this speculation, is this devotion, is this not devotion? It's just what it is, it's speculation. Everything is clear. So initiation is a symptom of surrender, but as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, even though you're initiated, you have to surrender every moment. Surrender is a moment-to-moment process. It's not just something you do and then it's over. No, not like that. You join a club and therefore you're a club member. No, it's not like that. You have to live according to the teachings given to you by your spiritual master. Then you're actually moving upward towards Krishna. And then you're on the path. Before initiation, you are simply getting the feel by practicing the bhakti. That's all. Initiation means beginning. And that's clear.
Perhaps these days they are taking 5 years or something like that. You have to wait before. These days you have to wait for 5 years before you take initiation. So,
Yeah, but you're still making advancement as you hear and chant the glories of the Lord. There's a reason why some people get initiated in 6 months, and there's a reason why somebody waits 5 years. It's not like it's just some deficiency in the system. No.
Thank you, Mataji. Sridevi Mataji, please.
Try to understand that everything centers around surrendering. But what does surrender mean? Who are you surrendering to? You're going to surrender to your own ideas, or you're surrendering to Krishna? The surrender to Krishna means surrender to Krishna's. You can go to verse 434 in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
And this is the beginning. This verse is spoken by Krishna himself. This is the beginning of devotional life. Tadvidi pratipatena pariprasyena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. So Krishna is making it clear in this verse. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Okay, first point, approach a spiritual master if you want to know the truth. Inquire submissively. Ask questions in a submissive tone and render service. That means you have to be ready to inquire about your spiritual life, and you should be ready to render service. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So here, 3 things: paripatena, pariprasyena, and sevaya. Approaching the spiritual master, inquiring submissively, rendering service. When you do these 3 things, then you are beginning the process of devotion.
regarding this, how can we deliver service to you? How can we give service to you?
I didn't hear that whole statement.
Mataji is asking, how can we give service to you, Maharaj?
Well, just ask me. Is there any service I can do? If you don't ask me, I won't give you anything.
Yes, Maharaj, I am asking.
But then again, if the spiritual master says, well, go serve in the temple where you are worshiping, that is also service to the spiritual master. So not everyone can do personal service, but everyone can do service.
Yes, Maharaj.
So if you say, how can I serve? Well, I'll say chant so many rounds, read the books so much time, go to the temple and see the deity, take part in the programs, offer your time for doing some service at different times throughout the week. So these are things that you can do.
Yes, Maharaj.
And if the spiritual master has some personal service and he's looking for someone to do it, then he can do that.
Sure. Maharaj, where do you spend most of your time? Like, what is your preferred location?
Well, I have a few preferred places, but I try to be wherever I am. In other words, I put my attention there. The receptivity of people is the preferred place. The more receptive people are to what we have, the more we prefer to be in those places. So we experiment and go to different places, and then we get that. So if you come to India, you'll see people are very receptive. And they take very seriously what you have to offer. If you go to
Yes,
Western,
I'm in Mumbai only,
you go,
Maharaj.
you go to other countries, people are not so serious, may just try to experiment what spiritual life is like. And then you have other places where people, if they don't have time, then they won't make time. So they say the farther west you go, the more materialistic people are. India is the beginning, is the focal point, the starting point. Move west. The more west you go, the more people are materialistic. And that's true. You just keep going farther west, you come to Hawaii, which is in the South Pacific, if you go in that direction. It's the most impossible place to preach Krishna consciousness. Because it's just too nice. People think that we got everything nice in the material world. Well, the sun rises in the east. But it doesn't mean Western people cannot be fully Krishna conscious. It just by consensus, you'll find that in the eastern block of the world, people are more inclined to spirituality. And as you move west, because of the influence of Western civilization, people are more materialistic. It's true. You can see that.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Sridevi Mataji, you want to go ahead?
I remember one devotee, he made a video about the importance of fasting. And then he was doing interviews with people in America about the importance of fasting, how it's beneficial for health and so many things. And one guy, he approached one guy, he said, fasting? He said, I eat fast, that's all. That's my fasting. I used to eat fast. He was serious too. So, yeah, it's just the way it is. But there are people in the West who are very inclined to spiritual life, and there are people in the East who are very materialistic. But if you give a general consensus, the more west or the farther west you go, the more materialistic you get. That's a general statement. It's not an absolute statement. What is the most materialistic place in the United States? New York. No, actually more, California. California is even more materialistic than New York.
How about Vegas?
Las Vegas is very sinful city.
Sin City, yeah.
It has everything, gambling, intoxication.
Wherever there is wherever there's gambling, they're all of the other three sinful activities are there: illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating.
But I still saw that there is a ISKCON operating, and I'm not sure how many people actually visit ISKCON Vegas.
Yeah, the devotees are trying. Anyway. We go to hell to preach sometimes.
Thank you, Supriya Mataji. Very nice questions. Sridevi Mataji.
Thank you. Maharaj, I have a question about this question of progression in spiritual life. We know that it is a stage-wise progress. We have Bhajana Kriya, which is initiation, then Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, and so on. But how do we know if we are progressing nicely or not? And how do we deal with ourselves if we think we are not doing well, making nice progress?
The question is, again, can you sum up the question?
How to know if one is making progress properly, and if one is not making progress properly, how to deal with those feelings?
Easy. The more eager you are to serve, to chant, to associate, these are all indications of making progress. The more eager you are to take time for materialistic activities, that means you're making progress in that direction. So, and sometimes it says there are two indications. One, how much you're developing the qualities of the mode of goodness. And two, how much you're losing your taste for material life. These are both symptoms of progress. Just like a fever, when you have a fever, there are certain symptoms that show that the fever is there. One of them is high temperature. So when the materialistic fever starts going down, that means the soul is becoming more healed. The jiva is becoming there. Have we lost our taste for material life? Or have we lost our taste just for some type of material life? Do we still look for material life to support, or do we simply depend on Krishna?
So supposing we are not feeling so eager, but we still push ourselves. We still push ourselves and say, no, I need to overcome this lethargy. I need to get more involved with devotional service. Is that at least one step forward, even if we may not be feeling it?
Yeah, but until you take the step, if nothing changes. If you really want to know some of the essential things that make fast progress, I can give you a couple. One is association with senior devotees. Two is perfecting your chanting, freeing yourself from the offenses of chanting, especially inattentive chanting. These two things, you can, if you want to work on these two, seeking out the association with senior devotees, hearing from them. And if you can render service, that's even more complete. And freeing yourself from inattentive chanting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that. He says, here's where you put your attention. Try to chant attentively. This is where you'll make progress. How many of you chant today? I don't know, it's not a Ekadasi for some of you, but for most of us, it's a Ekadasi. Right? Those of you who live in the UK or in India, it's a Ekadasi. Those who live in America, yesterday was a Ekadasi. So how many of you are chanting only 16 rounds on Ekadasi? I mean, is that all you can do on such a day where chanting is the most important activity? Oh, good, 32. Good. It's a day for chanting. Put aside all the other things for one particular day. Focus more on your chanting. And then you're showing Krishna, I want you. But if you just follow the routine, you're not really saying much to Krishna. I mean, you're getting something. But you have to make an effort. Yeah, this book, Chanting Hare Krishna, which is statements by Srila Prabhupada, is a very good book. Yeah. Statements by Prabhupada on chanting. There is Sachinandana's book, Ocean of Devotion, I think it's called. And you have one other book, I can't remember the name of it. But there's many books that are simply about the holy name.
The Living Name, Maharaj, by Sachinandana Maharaj.
That's Sachinandana. Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name, that's also the living name. There's one. There's another one by, I forgot his name. It's a really good book. Can't think of the person's name right now.
Sridevi Mataji is saying Bhurijana Maharaj.
No, well, Borijan also, but this devotee was a sannyasi in ISKCON. He has left ISKCON, but when he was in ISKCON, he produced a nice book, really good. That's it. Mahanidhi. I don't know, I can't remember the name of the book. He made a really good book. There's so many books on him. There's so many sections of the Bhagavatam that focus on the chanting process.
Maharaj, we have a question on chat by Anahita Mataji. This is a different topic. She is asking about how can we deal with discrimination within the Krishna conscious community amongst vaccinations. Prabhupada never believed in getting them, and he believed in Ayurvedic medicine, which is what I practice with my family, but I am finding it really hard within certain circles and around devotees who treat us very differently because we aren't vaccinated. Just wondered if you had any advice on this. Thank you so much.
Well, if I start talking about this subject, I'll get shut down because you can't talk against it online. It's everything that goes online is being monitored by Big Brother. So I won't mention it, but if you want to speak to me privately, speak to you.
Yes, Maharaj. Mataji, please contact Maharaj for this question.
Yeah, I want to speak with, I want to talk about this online.
Thank you, Maharaj. Supriya Mataji, you want to go ahead with your question? Anahita Mataji is saying that she will email you, Maharaj.
She's saying what?
She will email you.
Okay. Tell her to
I
send
had
me her, just send me your phone number and I'll speak to you like that. Just ask her to send me her
Yes,
WhatsApp.
Mataji. Yeah, Mataji, please send your phone number. Put the phone number in the chat. I'll note it down, Mataji.
No, just tell her to send it to me in an email.
Okay. Yeah. Mataji,
Dear
please.
devotees,
yeah.
dear devotees, I have put one YouTube link over here for chanting, and you can go. This is just one part of that video, but you can go through all other parts as well. It's a really good video. This is
About
regarding a chanting.
Okay.
Okay. I have just put one part. I could not find all other parts so quickly. And Maharaj, now new question is, there are two types of bhaktis, Raganuga Bhakti and Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay, Vaidhi Bhakti is something that the process we follow, the rituals, all chanting, regulative principle, etc., etc. And Raganuga Bhakti means all Bhava Bhakti, Prem Bhakti, all these things. But our ultimate goal is to achieve Krishna Prema, right? So there are many debates. People say that Vaidhi Bhakti, if you do Vaidhi Bhakti, it will lead to Raganuga Bhakti. But some say that if you directly go for Raganuga Bhakti, you can directly go for that path as well. So what is your opinion, Maharaj?
Well, I just finished reading Shiva Ram Maharaj's books. He speaks a lot about this. He also says that the qualifications for entering into Raga Bhakti begins on the platform of Ruchi, and it becomes mature on the platform of Ashakti. So Bhava Bhakti sort of reaches, Vaidhi Bhakti sort of reaches its culmination around Ruchi, which is the 6th step of the 9-step process. But one must work under the guidance of a qualified spiritual master. And I would suggest they read Shiva Ram Maharaj's book called Spontaneous Devotional Service. I've mentioned this a number of times. It's a small book, but it covers the whole science of Raganuga Bhakti and the different controversies around there. But ultimately, the goal is spontaneous devotional service.
Yes.
That
Maharaj,
is
who is the author?
one has to approach this subject matter in the proper way and not just whimsically. So read that book by Shiva Ram Maharaj, Spontaneous Devotional Service. If you're staying in the UK, the book is available. Or you can go online and get Maharaj's website and order the book. So it's a small book, so it's something that's not going to take you so. And if you his new book, which is Vilapa Kusumanjali, which deals a lot with spontaneous devotional service, centered around the life of Raghunath Das Goswami's service to Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world, and his practice of devotional service as Raghunath Das Goswami in the material world. So that book is a gem because it outlines the whole science of bhakti. Plus, it gives really clear understanding of how to proceed in different ways. But it also centers around the glories of Raghunath Das Goswami's spontaneous love for Srimati Radharani, which is really, really deep in devotion. So that Maharaj just released that book in October of this year. He did a release in London, and I guess the books are also available. I finished the book about a couple of weeks ago. Really amazing. But it's very scientifically presented with clear references and understandings. It's nothing. People say different things, but they can't back up what they say based on scripture. You have to quote scripture when you're speaking about such subject matters.
Yes, Mataji, do you have any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Maharaj. Dear devotees, any more questions? Revati Mataji, I saw your hand was raised previously. Do you want to ask any question?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Yeah, I think I got a little bit of answers from your previous thing, but I just want to clarify it again. Just my understanding, I was reading this Chaitanya Charitamrita also, where it mentions clearly illusion occurs due to inattentive hearing. Illusion occurs due to inattentive hearing. So it's very important to improve our quality of hearing, because our progress depends on our quality of hearing. Because even though we are practicing sadhakas, but still we are very much conditioned. Even though we are hearing from authority, we interpret in our own way. I was just trying to ask, if you have any suggestions, how can we improve our quality of hearing? It's a gradual progress, but if you have any more suggestions on that.
Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, third chapter, verse number 40. I think it's 43 or 44. Go to 43 first. This is direct from Srila Prabhupada, which will answer your question.
Third chapter, Maharaj. First canto, third chapter.
First canto, third chapter. Yeah. It's a very powerful verse. That when Krishna left the planet, he left himself in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Go down the page into the purport. Keep going. Let's see. Okay, go to verse number 44. I think it might be the next verse. And go down the page also. Here it is. Let me read the translation. When Sukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the same thing as I learned it from him and as I realized here. Okay, go down the page. This is the purport here. Yeah, this is the real process for receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if one hears with rapt attention from the right person at the beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in the persons in the pages of Bhagavatam. So rapt attention is giving, and the formula for developing rapt attention is here. One has to regulate the bodily activities very carefully, eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But then Prabhupada gives a concessionary statement that even if you're not up to that standard, try to hear with rapt attention. The word rapt is there in every one of the sentences, even in this translation. That means full consciousness of the sound vibration. And when the mind somehow or other goes, immediately recognizing the mind has gone away, bring it back again. So you have to practice this rapt attention. Those who have regulated their eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating down to a perfection, then they can easily hear with rapt attention. But even if you haven't done that, still, you can hear from the right person with absorption. So here's the formula right here. All you have to do is understand what is being said here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. So it's very important regulating your activities, like as you said, like eating, sleeping, and all these things. I can see personally with me, like when I'm very much like some days I'm not very like, regulated, it gets disturbed by the material activities. But the day when I'm very much like, regulated, I can see like my consciousness is also very active. I can see my attention and my sadhana is also very good. Yeah. And every
You're seeing the different dichotomies. You can see what is the ideal.
So consistency is also very important. I'm struggling with that. I'm trying.
Consistency is not very important, it's essential. You have to be consistent in the execution of your devotional service. If you're learning to walk, you have to practice every day. If you're learning to play an instrument, you have to practice consistently.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
To slow down, then you lose whatever you gain. You have to stay fixed. Devotional service means a fixed schedule of activities.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Yes, yeah. And trying every day we set up our things, and I'm trying and pushing myself to have a regulated things. That's what I see with me. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Practice.
Practice, yeah. And I just have another question, Guru Maharaj, about the spiritual progress. Progress is something internal. I understand based on your classes, it's like your qualities and everything. So a spiritual master, does he see the progress of the disciple, or based on his activities, or like how, like on his inner consciousness?
Yeah, I can see some of you are in Maya, some of you are less in Maya. Some of you are actually moving forward as time goes on. Others are not even moving any inches. So, yeah. And if you take association with the spiritual master, then you get more understanding of how to progress. That's why these classes are on every day, in order to keep everyone connected to the process. You may not do it yourself, but I'm giving you an opportunity to hear regularly. Take advantage of it. It's very valuable.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, these daily classes are really very, very helpful to us, very valuable. Thank you so much for all your mercy, which you shower on us daily. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Something I like to do. Sri Devi has another question.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. Yeah, Mataji, please go ahead.
Maharaj, this point which you made of attentive chanting, this is so important for us to progress in our spiritual life. So for me personally, I find that when I go to the temple early morning, attend Mangalarti, that's when I'm able to chant most attentively. So my question is, now that it is warming up a little bit, I would like to at least attempt going for Mangalarti.
Yeah. Obviously, you're seeing the results. So continue.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Good. I'm glad to hear it's warming up.
Great. Thank you. Anybody has any more comments or questions? We are almost reaching 2 hours. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I don't see any questions or comments.
Okay, we can start.
Yeah.
We got Rajesh is there.
Yeah, Rajesh, please.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, Hare Krishna, Srimati Devidasi. Thank you for hosting so nicely as always, and devotees.
Prabhu, you went on mute. You are mute.
Sorry, Mataji. Maharaj, I'm finding I'm not having too many questions recently. I think that's maybe a reflection on me that I've got a few questions I need to ask myself and sort of work through. But some really nice points, Maharaj, about knowledge, and so-called learned people talking about learned things. We had a class on Monday, and there was a reference in the Gita that we were speaking about, and this ties in really nicely about that. So you got me thinking about something from a different dimension or area. So thank you so much. I'll write a little bit more on you rather than boring you and everyone on it now. But thank you so much, Maharaj.
Good stuff. Thank you. I hope. Okay, so we can stop here.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear devotees.
Tomorrow we're going to handle Nityananda because in America it's his appearance day. In Europe it's on Friday. On India it's also on Friday.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. Thank you so much, dear devotees. For tomorrow's class, I'll post the link on the WhatsApp group. Thank you all for joining. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj ki jai. Thank you, Maharaj.
I may not be able to do the class on Friday because I think I have a class, an on-site class on Friday because of Lord Nityananda's appearance. So
Okay.
I'll let you know for sure when I get in the schedule.
Yes, Maharaj. Sure. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Okay.
Maharaj, we got message on WhatsApp. You have a class.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. Thank you, Maharaj.
Read the books.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Maharaj.